Welcome to today's Power Your Lunch Hour. My name is Vanessa Hansel, and I am the Assistant Director at the North 65 Chamber. And I am joined today by Executive Director Melissa Bettendorf, who will be co-facilitating today's meeting with me. We will be recording the presentation and the Q&A that will follow. Everyone is encouraged to introduce themselves in the chat if you want to put your name, your contact info. That'll help us just get to know each other and know who's in on the meeting today. And now, without any further hesitation, I would like to introduce today's guest speaker, Lena Scullard. Lena is the owner of LMS Productions, and she is here today to share with us about micro training and how we can use that process to drive results within your organization. So please join me in welcoming Lena.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I have been in the training space for over 10 years and feel really passionate about the effects and the impact that training can have on businesses and organizations. And I joined the chamber because I really wanted to get to know our small businesses specifically, knowing that small businesses have a lot of challenges when it comes to training. Traditional training, first of all, can be really expensive. And it's also a logistical nightmare trying to find the time to get your staff to attend and who's going to cover the business while your staff attends. And knowing that these are challenges for small businesses and also knowing the impact that training can have, I really wanted to reach out and give you some tools and strategies in micro training. And what micro training is very small, bite-sized training. It lasts anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes. And the thing about it is that it doesn't require a fancy PowerPoint. In fact, I'm not going to use one today just to show you that it can be done without a fancy PowerPoint. You don't need a fancy classroom. You can do micro training just about anywhere that you can gather your team. It might be in between shifts at a pre-shift meeting. It could be at a staff meeting. The reason that training is so important is that it actually costs you 2 to 3 times more dollars to attract new people to your business than it does to keep your current customers and clients coming back. But in order to do that, you have to have a well-trained staff, a staff that is confident and capable of meeting your customer and clients' needs. I also find it really interesting that most businesses spend 10 times the money on marketing, attracting new customers and clients, than they do on making sure their staff is trained to keep the current ones coming back. That's a lot of money that you're putting out to bring in new people that you're also not spending to make sure that your staff is trained to keep them coming back. I did some research and found out that of small businesses that do invest some kind of time and money into training, they see 34% higher retention. Wouldn't we all love to solve the labor problem that we have right now? Not only that, but 14% higher engagement in businesses that offer training to all levels of employee, but they also see 26% more revenue per trained employee. So that right there should be reason enough to figure out how to implement some kind of training in your company. And yet, knowing these statistics, there are still 40% of small businesses that don't offer training of any kind. And I think it's because of that challenge. They just don't know how to do it. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is we're going to talk about how you, without the need of a professional trainer, can create small, impactful micro trainings that you can deliver to your entire staff that I promise will get you higher retention, and it will get you improved performance for your whole organization. You'll see higher revenue, lower costs, and greater guest and client satisfaction scores. So knowing that we need to create these tiny 10 to 30 minute micro trainings, there is a very simple process that you can follow to do this. And that is, first of all, decide what your goals are as a company. Pick one goal. What's one thing that you wish you could improve? And you're going to build a small training around that. Once you've identified your goal, you're going to choose one skill. That's it. You might have a dozen that you can think of, but you're going to choose one skill that you believe can contribute to the success of that goal. Once you've identified your skill, You're going to break down the benefits, right? Because if we want anyone to buy into what we're asking them to do, they need to know what's in it for them. So identifying what is the benefit for the individual in acquiring this skill that you're hoping to teach them. Once you've identified that your goal, the skill that you want to teach in order to achieve that goal, and what's in it for the individual in learning that skill, then you plan your 10 to 30-minute training. And you're going to start out by grabbing their attention. You can share a fun statistic, a story, a fascinating fact, but you're going to start out with something that gets their attention. And then you're going to give them the big picture. You're going to let them know what it is that you're about to teach them and what you're expecting them to learn and why learning that skill is going to benefit them. Once you start out with that introduction, you kind of hook them, let them know what's in it for them. Then you get into the meat of the training. And I know training can seem really overwhelming. But if you think about it this way, you as the trainer have 3 jobs. And your audience, your learners, have 3 jobs. And these 3 jobs that you have as the trainer and that they have as the learner come straight out of Bloom's taxonomy. And Bloom was a psychologist and an educator in the 50s who developed a model for us to be able to talk about how the human brain takes in, processes, and internalizes information. So essentially, it's the process of how human beings learn. And so I do want to share this with you. Not that you have to memorize it, but it's going to kind of help you understand this process that we go through when we create training. And it really is training that's focused on the learner. So if everybody can see, this is Bloom's taxonomy, and this is on the cognitive level. Again, it's how we learn. And we start at the bottom. And we can't get to the next level until we've actually completed the level below it. And so the very first thing that our brain does is simply listen and remember. And so if you think about in elementary school, this is very much the level of learning that they were working on. When you learned your ABCs, you didn't really know what ABC meant, but you knew ABC went together, right? So that's that first lowest level of learning. Can we recall it? Can we remember it? Can we copy it? Once we can do that, then we can move into understanding. It's really comprehending. Do I know what it means? Can I summarize it and tell it to someone else? So it's just that next kind of level of processing. And then the third level then is application. So I know it, I understand it, and now can I do something with it? And a lot of models will refer to these first 3 as lower levels of learning. And then the next 3 are higher levels of learning. The good news is, as the trainer, you're really only responsible for getting them through the lower levels of learning. We as human beings mostly are responsible for getting ourselves up through the higher levels of learning. And that's where things get really complex, where we start to break things down, make judgments, mix up the parts, match them with other parts. That's really where a lot of philosophy and problem solving and things of that nature come in. That's not the kind of training you're going to be doing when you do these small micro trainings. Your responsibility as the trainer is to get people through these first 3 levels. All right, so I had mentioned that you have 3 jobs and your learner has 3 jobs. And that's kind of how we move people through these 3 levels of learning. Your 3 jobs as the trainer, number 1 is to tell them. Give them the basic, big picture of the information that they need. Your second job is to show them. Repetition is how we learn. So first you're going to tell them, then you're going to show them, you're going to walk them through it. And then your third job as the trainer is to watch them do it and give feedback. So tell them, show them, set them free, and watch them do it and give them feedback. So those are your 3 jobs as the trainer. Your learner's 3 jobs is to listen, to ask questions and make sure that they understand. And then their third job is to do something with it, to practice it, to apply it. And when you use those three things as the foundation, it becomes really easy to put together a training plan. What do I need them to know? How can I walk them through it, show them, guide them? And then how can I test them? How can I get them to do it themselves so that I can make sure that they got it, right? So that's the process. And then also as trainers, we measure where they're at by asking lots of questions, right? By asking open-ended questions and by making sure that they have the tools and the resources that we're asking them to use so that they can practice and apply. So I'm going to do that for you guys right now. I am going to send you in the chat box a worksheet that I created just for you. I'm going to send two of them. One is a macro enabled Word document, which means it's a form that you can type into. And we did test this earlier. Network disconnect. Well, let me go through this way. And then if you get a security warning and that scares you, we did also grab it as a PDF that you can also download. So choose your file type that best suits you. And so it'll either ask you to save it somewhere or download it, but feel free to open that up and take a look at it along with me. And my first question for you is looking at the form, and I'll give you a minute to get it open. But looking at the form, what's the first thing that needs to happen before I can start to plan the training? What do I need to do first? You can either tell me in the chat or you can turn your microphones on. We're a small group.
You need to set a goal. Right?
Yeah, you need to set a goal, right? Because you need your training needs to have a purpose, right? Adults especially don't want to learn something that has no point or no purpose. So you set the goal first. Okay. And then when it comes to, so I've set my goal, I've identified my skill, and I'm ready to sit down and start my planning. What's the first thing that I need to do before I can jump into the information?
Will you repeat that? I was opening files.
Yeah, I was just
No, I absolutely can. Thank you for asking. So I've done my plan. Before I can start throwing my information at my group that I'm training, what's the first thing I have to do?
Are you talking about the actual training itself or
Yes.
convincing them that training is a good idea? Oh, you have to grab their attention.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Grab their attention, right? You have to get their buy-in first. They have to understand why they're being asked to do what they're going to do and what's in it for them. So, okay, good. And then who can tell me the two questions that I just asked you? Why did I ask you that?
Make sure we understand it.
To check your understanding, right? So I'm using the same actually, this is my sheet right here, right? So I planned this Power Your Lunch Hour using the process that I'm giving you today because I wanted to show you that it works. Yeah, so you are going to tell them the information, right? Give them the information that they need. And then you're going to ask them some questions, right? To see if they've made it to that next level, that understanding level. Then if you look at the back side, we're just going to go right on to the next step. So I've told you, and then I've checked your understanding, and now we're going to go on to the next step, which is showing you. And we're on the second page. So the next part is explaining what you need to do. So if you want to apply this training that I'm giving you today, your action item is to practice using this worksheet to plan micro training for your team. And we're gonna go ahead and do one together as my way of showing you how this works. All right, so did anybody come with a training idea in mind? Or a goal in mind?
Well, as you were talking, I was like, this is perfect timing because I'm presenting next Power Your Lunch Hour.
Right? So yeah, you can practice
that's-
using it next month. Kirsten, do you want to use the one that we talked about yesterday with some of your clients' content developers?
Sure.
Okay, so let's just walk through the process. And we probably won't get through the whole sheet because we're going to run short on time. And I do want to give you guys a chance to ask questions. But also for those who watch the recording, I just want to make sure that they get a chance to see what this looks like in action. So everybody should be able to see my screen. And so if we were to identify a goal overall, Kirsten, what would you say that goal is?
And this is just based on like hiring a content creator.
Yeah.
Okay. My goal would be for them to develop that creative skill so that they can create content for other clients. And this is something they can use in the future too, if they ever branch off on their own or do their own thing at some point. It's a
Okay, so-
good creative skill.
So create social media content independently, right? Without somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yep.
And I would imagine that there are a lot of skills that could go with this. But if you could think of one that would be really impactful, what would that one skill be?
Being able to use different Photoshop applications.
Okay. Can you choose one?
We'll just choose Adobe Photoshop.
And what do you want them to be able to do specifically after this mini training?
Just know the basics on how to edit photos and create photos using the elements that are already there in Photoshop.
Okay. You guys can see what I'm doing here, right? Okay. All right. So how will the individual on your team benefit from acquiring this skill?
They will have the knowledge of how to use Adobe Photoshop under their belts. That's a skill all on its own.
Something to put on their resume, right?
Yep.
How about in terms of work performance or effort, or will anything in their life get easier?
Well, I think that's something you can use in your own personal life, knowing how to use
Okay.
Adobe Photoshop for anything you want, really.
Okay.
Um,
And then would you also say that they could probably produce work faster if they
Yeah.
have this skill?
Absolutely. It looks more professional and it's faster.
Okay. And then how would your business benefit from individuals having that skill?
It would free up time for me to take on other responsibilities so that I don't have to put so much time and effort into doing the content creation for clients. Then I can take on more clients.
So we'll just say team members across the board are more efficient in how they spend their time.
Right.
Okay. So knowing that you've identified kind of the goal and the skills, how might you grab someone's attention to get them to care about listening to the rest of what you have to say?
I'm not really sure about that. I don't know how I would grab attention. I guess I could do a very simple demonstration on how to change something drastically.
Or
Make it
could you
look completely different.
or could you show 2 examples
Yeah.
of like,
Which one?
this is an unskilled person's post versus this is someone who has this skill, and use it as a visual contrast, and then maybe
Yes.
ask the question, say, which of these would you like to say you produced at the end of the day,
Perfect. Yeah.
right? The rest of you, would that grab your attention? and at least make you care about what was coming next? Perfect. So we're going to show 2 contrasting examples of social media design. Perfect. All right. And then I have this section set up. Obviously, you don't have to do it in this way, but part of summarizing the goal, skill, and benefit is just to quickly let them know, in order for us to meet goal X, I'm going to teach you how to Y, and the benefits for that are ABC. Does that make sense, that section? Okay. And then the next thing you would do, Kirsten, is you would just plan. So first of all, let's just start with what I need to tell them to instruct them, right? So I might walk them through the different components of Adobe Photoshop, make sure that they understand the jargon and the definitions. And then I'm going to ask them 2 or 3 questions, right? Just to make sure that they're following, that they're getting it. And then you're going to go on to explain now what you'd like to see them do. Demonstrate it for them, right? So maybe load a photo in or create a photo for them, show them, let them see you do it, and then ask them to repeat it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And then as we get through that, then we go, the training has happened, right? By the time we get through those 3 things, we've told them, we've shown them, we've watched them, they've listened, they've made sure they understand, and then they've done something, right? They've applied it. Then we go on to the next step, which is just setting a really clear expectation. And this is leadership 101, right? It's kind of one of the things I wish as a professional trainer, I had kind of that authority to be able to say, now that you've learned it, I'm going to make sure that you do it. But this is about accountability. So it's just making sure that every single person knows the expectation you're going to hold them to. So now we've learned this as a group. And now over the next week or 2 weeks or whatever that is, I'm going to be watching to see if you are ABC, XYZ. So just being really clear about the expectation, and then maybe even attaching some kind of a contest to it or some kind of a reward or recognition system to motivate people to continue through the change. And then the last part is asking for a commitment, right? Asking somebody to tell you, now that you've learned this skill, what are you promising to do with it? So some of the questions that I put in that you can ask, and of course you could write your own, would just be, how do we as a team support each other now in making sure that we keep on this and that we implement this? How do we know if we're doing it or not? And what can we do if we start to fail or if we start to miss the mark? Do we go through the training a second time? Do we hold each other accountable and coach each other? So the more you can get the team involved in helping each other through the training, the more successful that's going to be. And then of course you have your follow-up plan. This is for you as the leader or the trainer. How are you going to measure? How often are you going to check? Are you going to watch and observe? Are you going to look at reports and statistics? How will you know if your training was successful? And what are your next steps? So staying true to my plan, I have told you, and we've kind of walked through the document. And so your next step would be to apply it. And although we don't have time for me to call on a volunteer and ask you to build a training right here on the spot, I'm just kidding, I wasn't going to do that anyway. I do want to make myself available to coach you through it. So Angie, if you want some feedback or before your Power Your Lunch hour, I'm happy to look at your training plan with you. Anybody else that's watching this, if you want a free consultation on creating a micro training so you can try it out and see how it goes, I would love to do that for you. And then of course, those of you on the call, I will follow up with in a couple of weeks and just see if you have any other questions. So that being said, does anybody have any questions at this time?
You answered all of mine because we walked through it basically, but that was really insightful, really helpful to hear that, because I am training people for other reasons as we speak. So that, and I have a meeting about that tomorrow. So that's really helpful to apply that before I go into this meeting in the morning. So thank you.
Good, I'm excited. I think it's really easy for us to make assumptions that people got it, like that people understand it. I think it's really easy for us to assume that if we tell them, they'll just be able to do it without that middle step. But if we follow kind of the psychology of learning, we can see why it's important not to skip the middle step. And I think that helps a lot of people improve their training when they realize. In fact, because we don't need fancy slides, right, to do training, but you could post something to remind your trainees about what they learned. So this is on my whiteboard. Again, your job as the trainer, tell them, show them, watch them. Don't skip a step, and then check in and follow up. It's really all you need to know.
I
Yeah,
really
I-
appreciate this. It's because I've heard all this before, and when I think through, when I've had to give talks before, I guess I'm pretty much following this, but I'm a very concrete thinker, so this makes it so much easier to just like step by step and make sure that nothing's getting missed.
Yes.
Because otherwise it's so easy to like miss one step, but that could completely change the impact of the training. So
It can. Yep. It leaves a gap. It's almost like if you have a bridge and you skip something, you start to pull planks out of the bridge, and then the
Yeah.
information falls through the cracks. So
yeah, I love this sheet. It's like having a checklist, a handy.
I am a worksheet girl, and I mean, I have worksheets that I like this that I've created that are only for myself. But I think it's because when I find a process that works, I want to capture the process so I can use it over and over again. So.
Are there any other questions for Lena today? If not, we will wrap up our session with Lena today. We would like to thank you so much, Lena, for being here with us and walking us through that process. Great information. If any of you would like to connect with Lena after today, you can find her under LMS Productions on, yep, there's her contact info. Perfect.
I had that ready.
Thank you. And you can also find her at north65chamber.com under the business directory under LMS Productions. Power Your Lunch Hour is held the fourth Tuesday of every month. And these 30-minute sessions are designed to provide you with focused, valuable training, resources, and business community connections. You can find all the latest information about Power Your Lunch Hour and other chamber programs on our website, which is north65chamber.com. And we invite all of you to join us for the next Power Your Lunch Hour, which will be August 24th, with guest speaker Angie Sparts from Phoenix Rising Wellness. And Angie's here with us today. So we look forward to connecting with you, Angie, next month and hearing from you. And I will stay on Zoom for a little bit after the conclusion of today's Power Your Lunch Hour if anyone has any follow-ups. But I'd like to thank you all for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.